Hello and welcome to the second of my Europa Universalis 5 AARs. And this time we're going to be playing as Wales, but a few things to point out before I get into it. First of all, if you're interested in playing EU5 and, the release is coming up on the 4th of November, if you want to pre-purchase the game, please feel free to use the link in my pinned comment. It gives you a Steam key from the Paradox store, and you help me out, you help out the channel. I get a 12% cut of every sale, so if you want to help out the channel, that's a great way to do it. Secondly, this is the second AAR I'm doing. The first one was as the Empire of the Romans, the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, or if you're a heathen, Byzantium. And while I had full plans on continuing on that run and, showcasing more of the later game with that tag, unfortunately, or fortunately in a way as well, we got a couple of pretty big updates since I did that run, and it kind of bricked the save in pretty unrecoverable ways. Like, I can still technically play it, but a lot of things have changed, a lot of things are different, and I think I would rather try again, if that makes sense. So I will do another run as them, and then play on from there, and maybe just give you a bit of a detail about what changed between this run and my previous run. That's probably not going to be the next AR I do, though. I do have a lot of ideas on other tags that I want to play, and I don't have a massive amount of free time nowadays. But anyway, let us get into the run. Again, before we start the run, though, one more thing. It is important to point out that this is the second crack at Wales. The first time I tried them, I got to around 1410, but I'm restarting because of the aforementioned new build of the game, and it fundamentally changes quite a lot of things, and having half the run on one old build and half on the new one wouldn't really be representative of the game, and that's kind of what the AARs are for. I will say as well, what I will be doing is painting on the map that you see. This is kind of my plan. Painting on the map while reading from a script that I was writing while I was playing. So I would play a year, write down a paragraph on what happened, if there was something that happened, or I would continue on. Anytime something interesting happened, I wrote it down. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, so my memory as well is just not very good. Also, dyspraxia, that's the one. I keep forgetting the thing that causes me to have a bad memory. It's a whole thing. Anyway, that one, dyspraxia, I am diagnosed with. ADHD, it's just a probably. And basically, my memory is terrible. So doing it this way, where I'm writing down as I play, it's been very, very helpful to me. But it's also meant that I've ended up with a script so far of over 10,000 words. And I'm not close to finishing. What we're going to do now is read the first 13 pages of my script. And then I'm going to continue playing, and we're going to have a part 2 later on. So this part is going to go all the way up until independence. This is, that seems like a really good way to, split off. This is me as a vassal, or I guess I start as a dominion, and this is me as independent. And I have things to say, and I have things to complain about, and things that I have made feedback on. I've got a very large thread in the Creator Discord where I'm giving hella feedback on my time as Wales. But we're gonna get into that. Let's first get into the actual AAR. So, like I said, this is on a new build of the game, and a couple of the most impactful changes, especially for our campaign, are that buildings now have a maintenance cost. All of them. Bailiffs got heavily nerfed, and they give less control, and can no longer be built on another continent. Another change that I think people will be quite happy to hear about is that levies are now much stronger. Their efficiency drops off by 10% every age, and so are more of a complement to your armies for much more of the game than they did in the previous build. Because, as well, armories are one of the things that drain your economy the hardest with this change to buildings using maintenance. Armories are like between 1 and 1 and 2.5 ducats per month each, and the amount of manpower you gain from the armory scales with your control. So early game, you know, it used to be that we unlocked professional armies, we rushed down to the armory, we got ourselves handgunners, and we had a massive, huge, colossal power spike over the AI who didn't do that, and we rolled them. That's no longer gonna be the case. That it just isn't anymore. Yeah, it's just not gonna happen that way. Anyway, with that out of the way, Wales. Wales starts in a very strange spot in Europa Universalis 5. The tag has just 8 locations and 108,000 pops to its name, and despite having 98% of its population be Welsh, the country itself is English, and as a dominion of England, we are ruled by King Edward III Plantagenet of England. The Welsh culture also starts with a negative opinion of English, and the same is true in reverse also. To fix this opinion, we'd need to be both the largest English culture tag and have a Welsh culture tag with enough favours that we can ask them to improve cultural opinion of us. That's not happening. Though I do believe there is a dynamic historical event that will somewhat solve this little issue of ours, but we'll get to that because it didn't. We also start with 8 vassals and 2 fiefdoms, all of English ruling culture that are directly under us and annexable, making up the bulk of Wales. Essentially, if I consult my handy little map here, those vassals are everything. Let me just find a. There we go. Those vassals are everything inside this little region that I am colouring in, except not Lancaster, so around there, and also not Lancaster again, so around there, and then there's Pembroke, and I can't remember how to pronounce that one, so we're not gonna. So essentially we have a bunch of vassals all over Wales, most of them vassals, or you know, we're gonna have to integrate them eventually. That is our plan. And hopefully as soon as possible as well. There are, though, a couple of locations in Wales held by English vassals, namely Sidweli and Trefynwy. This one here is Sidweli, this one here is Trefynwy. Also, again, sorry, another aside. I'm not Welsh. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm not Welsh. I do have Welsh family, but I don't know how to speak Welsh, and I'm going to, regardless of that fact, pronounce every single Welsh word absolutely perfectly, without a shade of doubt. Don't even worry about it. I got this. I got this. Both of these locations are held by the Earldom of Lancaster, this fella up here that owns Liverpool, Manchester, etc. Unfortunately, another one of the changes made in the update was a general increase in the amount of diplomatic capacity a vassal takes. So whereas before, in the previous patch, Wales could comfortably sit at minimum diplo spending and suffer no consequences, now even at maximum spending, we were 2.44 over our diplomatic capacity, reducing the loyalty of all of my subjects by minus 61, which is painful. I kinda need these guys to be loyal so that I can integrate them. Politically, we start off with only 19% crown power, and anytime that you're below 25%, you suffer pretty awful malices, like a reduction in tax and cabinet efficiency, and new to this build that we've just received, we also spend more on building upkeep. More on that in a bit, but just as, yeah, it's pain, it's very pain. Our low crown power is this low due to our English Parliament reform, which lowers crown power by 33%. This will be one to remove during our first Parliament debate if possible. We also have the Magna Carta government reform, which increases my nobles' power by 20%, but also gives us a 10% boost to our Parliament's base support and pushes me towards free subjects and individualism. Right now I don't think there's much better, so we'll leave it alone. Our other reform is the Iron Ring, which lowers our fort maintenance by 50%, but it also makes all buildings cost 50% more. I'll be getting rid of this as it doesn't seem remotely worth it. Unlike the Romans, there were no heinously bad noble or clergy privileges that I wanted to rid myself of, but I also didn't have a burghers estate, as there were simply no burghers in my country, nor were there in any of the countries Wales had as vassals, as none of them had even a single town. That would be a high priority to rectify. As a dominion, we spend 20% of our total income to our overlord as tribute, which isn't a whole lot because our total tax base right now is 5. Due to the silver mine that we have in Aberystwyth, which is right here, due to that silver mine, even when our minting is set to 0%, we are still gaining inflation. Despite this, I spend my starting ducats on upgrading our silver mine. If we're going to get out of this hole, then we shall be doing it with silver, regardless of the consequences. It costs 25 ducats to upgrade. Before this patch it would have cost 17, but construction goods like lumber and masonry were slightly nerfed, as now their price for is minus 50% rather than the minus 66% it was previously. The aforementioned iron ring does not affect RGO improvements, thankfully, so we queue an upgrade to the mine. As for trade, well, not even a town to my name. I have 0 trade capacity in both the London and Dublin markets. I could build rural marketplaces, but we definitely do not have the economy for that just yet. The new patch also made it so that we could reduce the fort maintenance slider all the way to 0 ducats, and we do so because despite having just 8 locations, we have 3 castles and 4 stockades, and we simply cannot afford them right now. So with all this done, we're still not making any money, and that is purely because of building upkeep. Now the state pays 10 to 20% of the goods upkeep of any building, and as Wales has 2 cathedrals and 1 monastery, we're paying 1.85 ducats to furnish them with glass, fine cloth, paper, and more. Goods that are just not readily available in my market, or should I say markets, as we're right on the edge of both London and Dublin, with little access to either. The starting situation could accurately be described as bleak, and as a heinous affront to the church, I deleted 1 cathedral and 1 monastery. More on that in a bit. I have 2 cabinet slots, so I decide to increase my diplomatic endeavours to hopefully mitigate the issues I'm having with vassal loyalty. My aim will be to rush the integration of these vassals as fast as I can, so that I can start to build up my country, ready for my inevitable betrayal and rebellion against England. But to even start on that path, I need them to not rebel against me. My second cabinet slot goes to increasing control into Hoybath, which is this area right here. It includes this, I forgot the name of that one already, but it includes this Lancastrian location as well, but obviously we don't own that, so who cares? But anyway, De Hoybath is the province where my silver mine is located. I also spy some cabinet actions that may be useful in the future. Sow disloyalty, which will reduce my loyalty to England, and frustrate annexation to make it 50% more costly to annex me, just in case England gets any funny ideas. I set a bunch of my vassals to improve relations, give the religious diplomats privilege to my clergy to give me +1 maximum diplomats, and rushed down to expand archives advance for +20% diplomatic capacity, and then gave common militias to the yeomanry to increase the power of my levy, and finally, primacy of nobility to the lords to get that sweet 5% discipline, and also to balance out the satisfaction they had lost through my other privileged shenanigans. Then I set off. Another new thing in the update was that the way the estates gained satisfaction. Previously, they worked on a rubber-banded equilibrium, where they would raise faster and the further away they were from the equilibrium. Now it is a flat growth, so losing satisfaction is much more painful than it used to be. And I will point out, I dislike this change immensely. I think the rubber banding equilibrium, where, if your equilibrium is 80 and you got your guys down to 20, it will rise faster. Whereas now, if you're down at 20, you're just rising steadily in a flat, 0 curve all the way to your new equilibrium. I really don't like this because it also makes it so that there is the meta strat for taxing your estates is to say we have this situation where equilibrium 80 and the satisfaction is currently at 20. The meta strat now is to change your tax amount on your estate so that their new equilibrium is 21. And it will rise slowly, and then you next month raise it 0.2 more, and then next month you raise it 0.2 more. So you're getting the absolute maximum amount of taxes every single month. It's really not a very nice way to play the game, I do not like it. I do not want it. I do not want to see it in the game. I hope that is changed. I really do. It is really, really awful. In January 1338, the first phase of the 100 Years' War kicked off, and while I was initially hopeful that this wouldn't affect me too heavily, as the Welsh AI never joined me in my own excursions into France when I played England, I did then see France and her vassals land in England. They were of course crushed, but several Welshmen died protecting my oppressor. What this did do, though, is expose me to the fact that you can start the annexation of your vassals while at war, and I used the plus 20 opinion bonus to start annexing Pembroke, which is this location right here, as it brought them over the necessary 150 relations. The decision of which vassal to integrate was very deliberate. Pembroke has a harbour suitability of 100%, literally as good as it gets. However, its population of 41,000 was only 2% Welsh, at 997 pops total, with 78% of it being English and a further 19% being Low Franconian. I chose it due to my country's cultural issues. Accepting Welsh cost me 3.4 cultural capacity out of my cap of 1.5. Taking on those English pops would rectify that somewhat and lead to an increase in my cabinet efficiency, which was suffering at minus 20% right now. I envisaged Pembroke as being the site of my first town and potentially also the site of my future capital. While being annexed, your subjects, plural, suffer minus 25 opinion with you, and you must keep their opinion above 125 not to stall out the annexation. I also made sure to only do one annexation at a time, as you get scaling penalties to annexation speed the more you do at once, starting with minus 50%. In 1339, we had our first parliament and went with increased ties to neighbours, which gave me plus 2 diplomatic reputation for 6 months, and if we passed the debate, we would gain 5 diplomats. We started the debate at 68% and immediately requested the Parliament to allow me to change my distribution of power law away from English Parliament and into favour of the ruler. Now, instead of minus 33% crown power, we instead gain 10%. I accepted the nobles' agenda to move me towards serfdom to bring me back above the 50% cutoff, which angered the clergy a little, but it wasn't anything too impactful, and they stayed above 50% satisfaction. At this point, the game told me I was no longer eligible for the Iron Ring government reform, as I didn't have a level 1 fort in my capital. Even though I did. Maybe the low maintenance screwed that up for me. I don't know. I was planning on removing it anyway, as plus 50% building cost is insane. To replace it, I took the diplomatic traditions for a further 3 Diplo rep and plus 1 Diplo capacity. When Pembroke finally got integrated, I deleted the monastery and cathedral they had, and then took a look at what it would take to upgrade to a town. The base price is 500 ducats, but due to the abundance of lumber and masonry in the market, this price was reduced to 347. If I could do a similar thing and collapse the price of glass, we'd be able to make that even cheaper. So I built a market village in Aberystwyth, the same place as our silver mine, in order to use the production method sand to glass, just to pump out that little more into the market. Glass or no, it would still take a long time to afford the town, as I was making just under a ducat a month. I also upgraded the Pearls RGO of Conwy, which is right here. Just adjacent to our capital, which is right here. As pearls are a great good that sell for a great price and are always in demand. When the Age of Renaissance rolled around in 1342, which was timed absolutely perfectly to line up with my acquisition of the classic scholasticism advance, which increased institution growth by 20%, seriously, those two events popped up on my screen at the same time. It was beautiful. I picked up the administrative focus. I was considering diplomatic for a long while for their bonus to Diplo rep and improve relations, but I thought by the time I pick it up, any of these advances, my subjects would be long integrated, so it simply wouldn't be worth it. Editor's note: I regret this decision. You won't find out why in this video. Subscribe, and there will be another video, and you will learn why I regret this decision. Yeah. Anyway, admin focus would allow us to pick up such things as improved max literacy, which we would absolutely need if we were ever going to be able to teach the English how to read Welsh, proximity cost, and stability investment. These 3 alone just felt more worthwhile to me than what I could get from Diplo or Mill Focus. As I had 2 wool locations in the province that was going to hold my first future town of Pembroke, this one here and this one here, I decided to build them rural cloth makers, which would turn their RGO wool they had into cloth. When you have the production in the same province as the raw resource, you get a production boost of 10%, so that seemed like a no-brainer. In 1346, England suffered a noble revolt. The north of England and Cornwall rose up, probably due to the changes that were made to estates with this patch, and in Cornwall a force of 10,000 noble rebels took down 2 English armies before they were put low. Estates are a much more present danger in this patch, and checking my own rebel sentiments, I had the yeomen building up an insurgency was due to hit in about 12 months, right as I got an event telling me of the Black Death. The rebellion started in 1347, and looking across the Channel, France was dealing with its own rebellion too. Compared to the complete lack of revolts I saw in the previous patch, seeing myself and 2 large AI nations all suffer from this mechanic really made me appreciate just how much I was missing rebels in EU5. That's not to say that this was any danger to me. 3 locations, sadly including both my silver and pearls, revolted, but was quickly put down as I was able to get a stack of levies on each location before my revolters had managed to raise their own. By the time the Black Death reached me in 1349, the total Welsh population in the world sat at 322,000. Of that, I had 123,000 of them, with a total population, including the English and some Dutch, at 175k, as well as a tax base of 11.4. And there really isn't anything a rural country with 0 towns can even do to try and slow the spread, curtail the casualties, or dampen the devastation. Sure, I could expel the sick, but that just allows me to build pest houses that I cannot afford to build. I could procure remedies to purchase medicaments that I couldn't afford, or I could isolate the country, which does nothing to piss off the burghers that I don't have, or the clergy, and brings my societal values in a direction that I don't actually want. My court could move into hiding, but I'm ruled from London anyway. So I did nothing, and I allowed the plague to run its course. When it finally left Wales, there were 200,000 Welsh pops remaining, of which 71,000 were mine, with my total pops now sitting at 104,000. King Edward, who died of the plague the first time I played this campaign, survived, though unfortunately his son and heir, the Black Prince, succumbed. This left England in a bit of a precarious position. As though Edward III had 8 children, the only male among them was the Black Prince. The heir to the throne now was Elizabeth, though I believe is actually misnamed in the game and should be called Isabella instead. I looked it up and yeah, she has the same birthday, but she's just called Elizabeth instead of the historical Isabella. If you know why, if that is like an actual thing that should be the case, then let me know, but I reported it. We'll see if anything happens about it. Having a female ruler is something that England has done several times in its history and has done so with immense success. But this is 1352, and so I'm not expecting anything quite so spectacular. I'll expect some upheaval and unrest, and perhaps even a change in dynasty from Plantagenet. Then again, Queen Philippa was just 42 in 1352, and IRL, she had her youngest child in 1355. So there's still a time for a potential Thomas to make an appearance. Now, as a bit of an aside, as I trundle my way through annexing the rest of my vassals, today, while I was at work, and I will point out that when I wrote this, today was a few days ago, but either way, I was listening to some videos by Cambrian Chronicles to get me more in the mood for my Welsh campaign for when I got home. One of the videos I was watching was The Mystery of the Missing Churches, which made me think of the cathedral and monastery that I'd demolished at the beginning of the game. In some cases, while he'd found these missing churches, they were being utilized in different ways, or maybe a new church stood atop the old, and it got me thinking about the buildings I'd demolished. And then it hit me. Instead of demolishing the buildings due to the cost of upkeep, I should have just closed them. That way, the building would remain on-site, ready to be reopened when the cash flow improved. For the cathedral that I inherited after annexing Caerdydd on the south coast of Wales, which is this Glamorgan state here, and I believe that's actually Cardiff. You know, Caerdydd. I pronounce everything perfectly. If I say the word multiple times in multiple different ways, they're all perfect. Don't worry about it. And yes, that is exactly what I did. Destitution over destruction. We had a little church here, and we just closed it. We didn't demolish it. In 1356, I had managed to scrounge enough favours with England in order to ask them for money, who transferred me 125 ducats. This influx brought me closer to my goal of building a town, though I was still quite far from it. I would need more glass and lumber to bring the price low enough to found Pembroke Town. So instead of saving more, I used the money to build 7 more market villages, whose production method was all turned into glass. This would require me to make more sand, though, so my plan was to use the meager trade capacity that these buildings gave me to import sand. In 1364, 2 things happened. Firstly, I finished annexing all of my subjects, which was fantastic. It brought me to a total pop of 300,000, of which 182,000 were glorious, lovely Welshmen, and 111,000 were heinous, perfidious Englishmen. Secondly, I had a parliament debate to promote urbanization, which unfortunately had a starting support of just 21%. To pass, I'd have to do many parliament agendas, which would tank my estate satisfactions, but if I managed it, I would have a lovely free town in Cardiff. With agendas, I passed as many as I dared and got support up to 39%, but I would need to have some positive events to get this done. With 120 days to go, I got the event Parliamentary Traditions, which gave me 10%, just 1% more needed. In an absolute clutch moment, if I got to 1 day left without passing, I could give my clergy the favor the faith policy, which would override favor the ruler and tank my crown power, and I desperately did not want that to happen. We crossed our fingers, and I got lucky. Another Parliamentary Traditions event happened 1 month later, and we had our passing grade. Unfortunately, the RGO in Cardiff was wheat, so not exactly the best place to urbanize, but I would take it nonetheless. Before the debate passed, I'd finally scraped together the final ducats to build my town of Pembroke, and with the cost reductions we had from reducing the price of glass by 4%, masonry by the full 50%, and lumber by 32.5%, as well as the formal city rights advance that reduced the overall cost by 10%, we're now spending just 333 ducats on a town. A few days later, the debate ended and Cardiff also became a town. Strangely, this one happened immediately, whereas with Pembroke, it would take a year, but either way, I was quite satisfied. So now I have a town here, and I have a town here, and my capital is still up here, being quite useless. Cardiff was part of the Glamorgan province, and other than the wheat RGO that I'd already mentioned, which had been upgraded to level 4 by the way, it also sported 2 coal, some iron, some stone, and if I ever managed to take Trefinwy from Lancaster, it would also have some fruit. This said to me that this would be a very industrial town, with a focus on things like tools, weaponry, and perhaps eventually things like guns and cannons being made from here. With that in mind, I started the construction of 2 levels of Tools Guild, and also a wharf to improve the proximity and control of the town. With Pembroke, I had fish in the town, but also 2 wool, a livestock, my silver, and also an iron if I could get it away from Lancaster once again. I decided to focus on the wool aspect of the province, so along with the rural cloth makers built in my wool locations, I also built a spinner's guild, a tailor's guild, and a paper maker. The spinner's guild and rural cloth makers would make cloth. The tailor's guild and paper maker could both use that cloth. I also built a scriptorium for the clergy to work in, who could use that paper to make books. In 1372, I accepted professional armies for 19 stability and 15 ducats. And with the new tech system, every institution you embrace speeds up your tech gain by 5%, which brought me from 1.53 a month to 1.59. Not a stupendous amount, but it stacks and it's quite lovely. I didn't queue up any of the army advances though, as I knew I'd never be able to afford a standing army anyways, especially as the buildings upkeep on armories was hellish, and I'd never afford to have enough armories to make a difference to England. In 1373, we got our first Welsh dynamic historical event, with the appearance of one Sir Owen Glendower appearing at our court. He descends from the pre-English native royal dynasty of Wales, Mathrafal, and we can decide to sponsor his education in law, enlist him for our military service, or allow him to make his own choice. This would give him a boost in either admin or military skill. And I chose law, which cost me 25 ducats, but turned him into a 42-10-45 character. For one of my parliament debates, I decided to go with expanding our gravel road network, as keeping my control across Wales was turning out to be quite the task. It reduces the cost of roads by 20% while active, and the time it takes for roads to complete by 20% as well. The effect of roads can't really be understated. They remove 20 proximity impact, which, when one location away from my capital had 40 proximity impact, is essentially doubling my proximity, or halving, or whatever. Essentially, it's goated. They also reduce the market access cost, which means it's cheaper for me to import and export goods as the price of the transport goes down. Roads are great. Build your roads. It's great. Build them. Another thing we had been doing for a while now is using one of our cabinet members to teach the English how to speak Welsh in Deheubarth. Seemingly, he was successful, as the town of Pembroke renamed itself to Penfro now that the Welsh were the majority of the location. Not bad for a place that starts the game at 2% Welsh. My cabinet member was then swapped over to Glamorgan, where Swansea also had a dominantly English culture. We'd known since the British Isles Tinto maps that there were Welsh localizations for every location in Britain, and that was a large part of why I wanted to try this run. I really wanted to see every location eventually be majority Welsh. In 1393, Queen Elizabeth offed herself, and, as I suspected, her heir took on the dynasty name of her husband. So instead of the prestige of the Plantagenet dynasty, we were now ruled by King Nigel de Cheltenham. What a downgrade, though. Thinking that at some point a war between myself and England was inevitable, in my next Parliament debate I took the issue of promoting castle works, which reduced the construction cost of fort buildings by 50% while being debated, and then with a rather lucky event that gave me 120 ducats, I built 3 new castles in Caerphilly, Maesfed, and Wrexham, which is... I will try and remember where. I believe it's like here, here, and here. Essentially just across the middle of Wales. I then got my administrative system changed to Central Council through Parliament request, and that gave the nobles one of their agendas to get me back over 50%. The second of our DHEs appeared in 1398 when Sir Owen had some land seized by a neighbouring English baron, who was also labelled a traitor by the English courts for failing to provide a levy for a border service with Scotland, though he claims he never received such summons. To rectify this, we dispatched a letter to the newly inaugurated King Nigel, though he refused an audience and stated that the court's proclamation of traitor stands. Owen, appalled by this treatment, began to ferment a rebellion and started calling himself the Prince of Wales. We have 2 options through this event. The first is the book option. It has Owen become our king, and we declare an independence war against England. The second has my lords embrace the Welsh culture and pretend a rebel start to grow in Wales. That I believe I can just lose to, hopefully. I saved the game because I kind of want to try both. We'll choose the book option first, and we are absolutely demolished, crushed, wiped out. The English send over 30,000 men into Wales within a month of the rebellion's start, which feels a little ahistorically fast to me. And they even get help from Aragon too. This path is suicidal. I speed 5'd until England fully occupies me just to see what peace they would enforce is, and zooming out I count 58,000 troops total in Wales. We could only raise 8,000, by the way. England takes my capital province for themselves and liberates Deheubarth, takes all my money, and demands war reps. This is not the way. Reloading, we take the second option. We will oppose this anarchy. Our lords embrace Welsh culture and join a rebellion with Sir Owen, which grows by 1.24% every month. By the time we got to 80% though, for whatever reason, perhaps the amazing way in which I was leading my country, the speed had dropped to 0.27%, and whereas before it was all of Deheubarth and Glamorgan that was supporting this rebellion, now it was isolated to just the single location of Ewias on the English border, which is this one right here. And then, before it hit 100%, it was over. Sir Owen was still a member of my country, but his rebellion had fizzled out completely. I have no idea how this is supposed to work. I reloaded again. 1,050 pops supporting Owen Glendower, and they were all present in all of Glamorgan and all of Glamorgan. I switched away from increasing control with my cabinet and instead focused on culture conversion to Welsh, hoping that it might increase the amount of demand there would be for a Welsh king. Yet again it fizzled out. Another reload, and watching it like a hawk this time, it turned out that while it was growing, it still had around 1,100 pops, and then the faction just disappeared in January 1402. Another reload. This time I think maybe my stability, which was at 47%, could be too high. So I spent 20 of it moving my capital to Penfro, as I was planning to do all along. 31st of December 1401, supporters of Owen Glendower, 1059. 53% progress, gaining 1.15 progress a month. 1st of January 1402, no rebels present in your country. And then I spotted the reason why. Owen died on the 13th of December, and to reroll deaths, you can't just go back a month, you have to go back more. A full year, it seems. So I go back to the May 1401 and try again. I still move my capital again just because, and we speed forward to the 13th of December to see if my boy dies again. He does not. It looks like deaths are on a 1-year delay from what I can tell, so if you have a character die, use a greater than 1-year-old autosave and try again. Anyway, we keep on growing, and so does my income, as I'm now able to get to 100% control in Penfro, the place I've invested into more than anywhere else. And it's much, much closer to Cardiff, too. Unfortunately, with this growth in control, Owen's forces will no longer rebel into Heubath. Another reload. Our aim is to have these rebels fire, and then surrender to them before England can get involved and kick their teeth in. And to do that, we need them to be able to control more land, as a rebellion needs to control a certain amount before you can surrender to them. After multiple attempts, we finally got them to 100%, and they were only going to spawn into Heubath and Glamorgan. I put my fort maintenance to 0, hoping that Owen's rebels would swiftly siege the provincial capitals and flip me before England came rocking down. Another thing I learned is that getting to 100% wasn't exactly enough to get them all to fire. They also needed more than 1,000 pops as part of the rebellion, and the moment they hit 100% in January, they were down to 990. It is what it is. To rectify this, I gave out a burgher privilege, which pissed off my nobles just enough for some of them to join Owen's revolt. I paused and saved on the 1st of May 1405, because I thought I'd probably have to go back to this point several times. And checking the surrender options, Owen needed to control 391,000 pops. He currently controlled 166,000. The problem was I only had 195,000 left, which was 30,000 short of the target, even if he fully occupied me. Before Owen had raised a single levy, England intervened and it was over. So, let's talk about what went wrong and what I could do differently. Firstly, I had no idea that the Glendower revolt was tied to noble pops. I had been, as I often am, trying to reduce the power of the nobles and put more in the hands of the crown. It's just how I play. Maybe that resulted in me having fewer pops join Owen's rebellion. I don't know. Most of all, I think what went wrong is that this just isn't there. It's not supposed to be played, if that makes sense. This dynamic historical event chain is 3 events total, and I think this tag specifically really suffers from the move away from mission trees and narrative content. I had to reload my game around a dozen times for Owen to even live to see his rebellion, and there's legitimately 0 ways to have him win. England gets involved far too quickly, they bring far more troops to the region to fight than they ever did in real life, and I don't think there's any hope, no matter how good you are at the game. Historically, Owen started his rebellion with 300 men and assaulted 7 towns before England was even aware of the issue. And a major battle of the rebellion, the Battle of Bryn Glas, was fought between 1,500 Welshmen and 2,000 Englishmen. This is so far removed from the 30,000 that I'm seeing appear in Wales before the month of May has even finished. I think it could have worked if maybe France had made me independent after one of the 100 Years' Wars, or if England had some nasty streak of events that tanked my loyalty and I could get France and Castile and Denmark to support my independence. But as it stands, there's just nothing you can do as Wales to survive. Well, that's a lie. There is one thing. And I know some of you will not like it, so if this is where you drop out of the video, then thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed 70 or so years of Wales. Pre-order the game from my link in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. But if you stick around, we're gonna cheat. Unlike EU4, the console in EU5 follows a similar pattern to the more modern Paradox games, where you have to enable it from the pre-launch options on Steam, at least until Agamade makes a mod to open it with a keybind. But that hasn't happened yet, so into the console we go. To do it, I tag flipped to Owen's rebellion and had him annex a tag with 225,000 pops, which happened to be Bosnia. Though, no, I did not flip Christiani. I am not the playmaker. And with that done, I flipped back to Wales, offered my surrender, and released Bosnia back into the wild. And with that, what did we end up with? Well, we have become a vassal rather than a dominion of England, which means we can have our own ruler, Owen Glendower. Our flag remains the same, the quartered lions, which is this one right here. Red on a gold field and gold on a red field. No dragons in sight, even though historically Owen used a golden dragon on a white field as his banner. Not that one. This one right here, which personally I think this slaps. I think I love dragons. It's kind of reasonable. But yeah, no, it's just not there. Anyway. The most striking thing of all, the part that I'm quite legitimately annoyed at, is that our primary culture remains English. And Welsh, it's not even accepted anymore. It is legitimately a run killer, to be quite honest. And to fix it, I would need to conquer England, or at least have more of England than England does, release a Welsh vassal, then ask the vassal to improve cultural relations with me, which is 50 favours, by the way, and then hope they ask me the same thing. Then, when Welsh is kindred culture to English, at that point, then we can change primary culture. No, that's just not feasible or realistic. So, we are going to be doing a little bit of the cheating. The console is a little bit more advanced than it was in EU4, and some commands I have yet to get the grasp of, just like how do you control, like as in a siege, one location. In EU4 that was just control and the location's ID, but here, no such luck. No idea. But just, I threw in, as a guess, the command culture space Welsh, just on a whim, after about an hour of digging through the save file to see what I could accomplish there and failing, and it worked. Primary culture Welsh, English as an accepted culture, and this run is not dead after all. Game on. The first thing I did after assessing my country for the state it was in was to receive, and somehow instantly accept, an English proposal to improve the Welsh opinion of the English. This is what I wanted all a bloody long. It is what it is. The control across my country was abhorrent, so my previously strong tax base of 32 ducats had been cut in half. My stability, which was hovering around the 40 to 50 mark, had sunk to -20, though I threw another -20 on that as I moved my capital to Penfro. If I was going to be building from the ground up, I wanted to do it in the right way. I sent a diplomat to France to improve relations, and I sent an offer of royal marriage to the Breton Eleanor de Machecoul. Machecoul, whatever. The daughter of the Duchess of Brittany. They soon had a daughter, Guinevere, who I was certain I was never going to be able to afford expensive education for. I could build a town for the price of an education. On the 13th of March, 1409, Dame Eleanor gave birth to Owen's only son, Llewellyn, the most Welsh name imaginable. But reading the event text for his birth, I noticed it said, "Your late grace." Yeah. Owen, who had the drunkard trait, had succumbed to a sudden illness, which goes by many names, but it is most elegantly referred to in Latin as ebriocidium, or more commonly, mors et shitfastium. Well, my Breton lady would be the consort until Llewellyn grew up. How delightful. I had unlocked Renaissance advances by this point, and after researching Renaissance thought, I had a new government reform to slot in beside my Magna Carta and diplomatic traditions. Honestly, though, oh yes, because of course, Owen Glendower, his rebellion, I now have Magna Carta again. Why? I don't know. Honestly, as soon as we get a decent amount of stability, I'm going to be removing both of these as well. Owen's royal decree to increase my crown power again, and scanning through-eyed eyes on plutocratic ethos and autocracy too. I realized that I'd overbuilt my silver mine. so once again I was forced to have minting at 0%, making 0 ducats from it, despite having built it to level 7. I downgraded back to 4, which allowed me to start minting again. I don't know if I'm making more money trading away the silver, or now with minting it, but I feel more wealthy now, so I think I did the right thing. I don't know yet what the math is on it, on what causes you to gain inflation through minting. It'd be something to investigate. For generalist, not for me, I don't have a clue. I also changed my laws to regulated export rather than unlimited export, and this allowed me to mint even more of my silver. Instead of 0 ducats income, I was now making 153. In 1425, my heir Llewellyn took the throne with 39, 30, 55 stats. Not exactly stellar, but not the worst I've seen either. I looked around for who to marry, and I was really wanting to wait for France. Their King Jehan was 67 and had no children, and the French Diplo panel showed no heir at all. I decided to hold off to see what would happen. In the end, he lived to 76, and France had a noble regent for a year before the regent took the throne for himself. He was 69 at the time. No wife, no heir. I imagine his time will be short too. I gave up on the French connection, and instead married Luitgard from the Duchy of Hesse, lacking any better options. I also reached enough religious influence to ask the Pope to canonize Owen Glendower. And we did so. Very beautiful. Our Father, which gained us some prestige and legitimacy. Most of this time was me waiting for my ducats to grow and then constructing something of value. I saved up to enough to make Inis Mon, the island to the north, a town, as it was a flat grasslands, which I find to be the best value for towns, and its RGO of stone wasn't going to be in short supply. I had a saltpeter guild set up, as the province of Gwynedd had the clay for pottery and the livestock available to make it. When the Age of Discovery rocked up, I chose diplomatic focus, as I wanted to see if I could make my own Welsh New World colonies, and things like colonial ventures for 50% monthly migration and Quest for the New World for faster exploration seemed like the right play. To be able to afford the 10 ducats per month cost of exploration, though, we needed to expand the economy further, as we were right now making around $650 a month balance from our 65 tax base. Of course, this wasn't exactly helped by England taking $466 a month from me. Our next Parliament issue was to expand our armoury. We had researched these a few years back, but not built any yet, mainly because they were 100 ducat base cost and would serve as nothing but an economic drain. I would have to supply guns, leather, cloth, paper, and weapons for its upkeep. The Parliament issue, though, would build 2, one in Penfro and one in Cardiff, which were my 2 best towns. One thing armories do that is different to the previous patch is that the manpower you get from them scales by the control in the location, so you really don't want to be building these in low control locations, as the cost of upkeep does not similarly reduce. While both Penfro and Cardiff had docks and wharfs to help with proximity, the maritime presence I had outside Cardiff was shockingly bad, so I built 2 docks to help alleviate that. In 1441, my overtures towards France, Castile, Portugal, Aragon, and Sweden came back saying they had maxed out my relations, and my loyalty towards England dropped below 50. So I started an independence movement against them. This creates an international organization, and will show me the size of the enemy army, which stood at just 11,000 regulars, which is still quite a lot of regulars, and 50,000 levies. And also the size of the coalition, which was just 5,000 levies. Me. Not exactly off to a winning start. However, I was able to first invite France, then Castile. And then, when my diplomats got back, I also invited Portugal, and finally, also, I got Sweden. The size now stood at 11k plus 50k for England, 65k plus 133k for Wales. Navally, England had 23 boats, whereas our coalition had 214. If I got lucky and my allies actually got involved and actually sent troops across the water, we might just win this thing. I decided to wait for one more parliament to hopefully get another fortification boost, perhaps even increase my own levy size, though I was unlucky and this debate didn't have that option. I took Expand Gravel Network to make sure I could get over 50% support, asked for larger levies with a parliament law, saved the game because of course, and I declared war on the 11th of November, 1444. Aha. Initially the war was going quite badly. My raised levies got smashed by the English regulars, But then England decided to change tack and started shipping troops to France. They had still some French land near Calais, and Aquitaine was in their union, so we were left with a minor reprieve, although I only had 2,000 troops remaining. Our job would be to do hit-and-run attacks on the small Chester and Durham stacks that were harassing my forts. Ever since I became Welsh, back when I cheated to have Owen Glendower succeed, I'd had a notification telling me that I was below my expected amount of rivals, and I'd always held off because my only valid rival was Scotland, or rather as they were known now, Alba, and I thought that maybe one day they would be useful to have as a friend. Well, today is that day. Alba sent me an alliance request while we were fighting, and I gleefully accepted and called them into arms. England now has another enemy on the same landmass, no boats required. 55,000 Scotsmen descend from the Highlands onto the forts of Carlisle and Berwick, and as soon as those would fall, the rest of England laid bare for them. Just then, Norway, who were in a personal union with Sweden, my ally, landed on my shores. With 3,000 men, and I had to hightail it. I could not fight that army and win. I had no idea they were going to get involved when Sweden is right there. Checking the war score, Aragon, Savoy, Franche-Comté, Burgundy, and Lorraine had also joined. And though we did outnumber our enemies 330,000 to 110,000, it was not smooth sailing. Especially for me. For some reason, and maybe this is just me not understanding how the fort rules work just yet, Norway was able to walk unhindered throughout all of southern Wales. So my army, which was down to 1,000 at this point after a battle in Trefinwy where I wiped an army of Englishmen, was caught in Cardiff and wiped out. Despite being made up of 0 men, my army retreated to Innismon instead. Looking north, I saw an army of 22,000 English engage the Scots, 20,000 in Carlisle. But the Scots, yes, they had an extra 21,000 waiting in reserve, which stood there watching while the Scottish besiegers were butchered, losing half their number for only 4,000 English losses. Because we were doing such a good job on the continent, we were already up to 33% war score, and checking the peace deal, where independence was an enforced part of the treaty, the English would accept. But I felt I needed to go just a little bit further. We could get more. The English victors of Carlisle moved north into Roxburgh, and the lazy Scots, who failed to reinforce, took the battle. 20,000 Scots versus 16,000 English, and the Scottish took another defeat, 31% war score. A battle or siege occurred on the continent that I'd missed, and I saw us at 49% war score. Surely this was the opportunity, and they didn't even want to entertain the possibility of independence. For whatever reason. I was going to have to watch the treaty like a hawk, and so I did. The number kept going up. 58% war score, plus 34 reasons for peace, just for independence. How much land could I add? Well, the Welsh land for sure, taking the rest of Deheubarth and Glamorgan absolutely. Also in the north, the location of Flint needed returning to me, but I could take more. The rest of Shropshire and Herefordshire, all of Gloucester, all of Somerset? I needed more. I clicked another province. Devon. Cornwall. 63% war score, 0 reasons to accept. We just needed one more. England landed an army on Innismon and wiped out my 100 regular horsemen. Whatever. Villenoy asked for a separate peace. That's it. Separate pieces. Franche-Comté, war reps, annul alliance with England. All your money. Savoy the same. Also, some liberates because I'm a dick. Hainaut, gone. Holland, gone. I could have made Holland a vassal of France, but I decided against it. Aragon, liberate Mallorca, and war reps. Lorraine, Verdun, Aquitaine, all gone. The only one who would remain standing beside England was Norway, and I checked the peace screen once again to see England put us back down to 36% war score, and I was now minus 51 reasons for my excessive peace deal. But I was now making 28 ducats per month from war reps, which was nice, and now that so many had left the war, I was confident that France would launch an invasion across the Channel immediately. No, they didn't do that. So I reloaded to before I pieced out a bunch of people, and I took all the land I wanted, except the town of Flint, as that was doubled in price due to being owned by Chester, right here. And the war reps were worth more than 20,000 pops it would give me. We started the war with 433,000 pops, and I gained 596,000, for a new total population of 1 million. The English did now outnumber me in my own country 60% to 34%, but that could be dealt with, and they were already an accepted culture. I also had 53,000 Cornish pops, who were kindred to our kind. This massive influx of pop and land didn't pay for itself immediately, as I had zero control and a lot of buildings demanding goods. Our income was still 28, but our expenses had jumped to 40. I jumped into action, putting all 3 cabinet members on integrating provinces. Our fort maintenance was again dropped to 0, armories and cathedrals were closed, and I enjoyed 20 ducats of war reps from England. Unlike EU4, when you finish your independence war, the tags that had aided you in gaining freedom do not become your allies. So to save me from the English reprisals, I joined a defensive pact with France, so at least if England attacked, I would have them to back me up. I also set a vote for assured defense to make sure France wouldn't join. Now, that is where I will leave this. I do have a further 4 pages written. That was the end of page 13. I've got 4 more pages, and there will be more to come after that. I am not done yet. But I just want to talk about what I did. I am quite happy so far with how this campaign is coming along. Obviously, all of this that is coloured in is land that I took from England. But yeah, I want to say the situation with Owen and Glendower, the revolt, I have also reported that to Paradox. Hopefully that will be fixed by release. I don't think it will be, though. I think the best solution to this situation is a situation. I think Owen's revolt should be turned into a situation. And it should be something that England can't directly get involved with. And I know they did historically, but I think at the start of the situation, you should be able to choose as Wales whether you want to support Owen or be against him. And the side that sticks with England will be basically getting mercenary units or just extra troops from England to fight the war. But it would remain relatively even. I think when the war ends, if Owen is the victor, then probably the flag that should be used is this flag right here. This is the Roaring Lions flag. It is different from the flag that you start the game as. This is the Welsh flag from the game. These are called passive lions, and Owen used these roaring lions as sort of kind of harking back to this flag. This is the flag of Gwynedd today. So I'd be happy with this flag being what you have when you become independent as Owen, or even just when when you are playing the game and have won as his rebellion, right? You can still stay as a vassal of England as Owen, but your flag changes to this, and then maybe when you then gain proper independence, then you can go and grab yourself this gorgeous golden dragon flag. That would be really cool, and I'd be very much in support of that. But yeah, there will be more about the ramifications of my independence, how that goes, how I continue this campaign, and I don't actually have an ETA for you. Hopefully within the next week, but I honestly couldn't say for sure. What I can say is I really have enjoyed this campaign. Even though I had to cheat, it has been very eye-opening playing a country that starts with no towns whatsoever, that you have to think, okay, what is in this province? What do I want to make this province into? What do I want to make this town into? Specializing towns is very, very different from playing in Italy, where you have a bunch of towns and cities at the start of the game and you kind of just don't really care what's in the province trade good-wise. It's a very different experience, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I think it's taught me a lot more about the game than playing in Italy or playing the Romans has done. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend it when Paradox gets around to fixing it. Or you could just do what I did and use the console to fix the bullshit. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Yet again, if you would like to pick up EU5, I have a pre-order link down below. It is to the Paradox store. You do get a Steam key, and I get a bit of a cut of the sale. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.